vissa koshna faharga via chagma wanchur hen mawami kosmoya de kosma heart legan say yingi arwa bajri na hika gaya but you are going so
Hello, welcome to Health Quest. My name is Christina. I'm your host this evening, and we're here with Deborah Arneson to talk about the Ayurvedic Way. Now, what is Ayurveda?
Well, Ayurveda, Christina, is a 5,000-year-old modality of healing the body. And Ayurveda actually originated back in, well, the Himalayas when the rishis, who are the great ancient sages of India, went into the Himalayas, the mountains, to meditate and receive the word from God as to how to live our lives. That's how history goes anyway, or you know, the saga. Okay. And basically they went up and they were given the gift of the Vedas. And the Vedas incorporate things such as yoga and meditation and living in a certain way, a balanced way, you know, adhering to seasonal routines and eating foods that are seasonal. It's like in the winter you eat winter foods, in the spring you eat spring foods, in the summer you eat summer foods, which we no longer do in America because we're importing foods from all over the world all the time. We wonder why our stomachs hurt. So the bottom line is that there's all these different components to eating the Ayurvedic way and to healing your body through Ayurveda. So it's the use basically of foods, routines, meditation, breath called pranayama, and yoga, stretching. So it's many different things that incorporate that one would incorporate into their life to be mindful of all these different components of living in a balanced way.
And these are all, the balanced way means that you're living in a healthful way? Or?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's very healthfully focused. And the bottom line, again, comes back to using whole live foods. The spiritual premise behind Ayurveda is something that I love and I really, you know, try to embrace and incorporate more into my own life. And it's basically taking exactly what you need from the earth and the planet, not being, you know, a gorger or a hoarder of whatever it is, and living in simplicity and giving back more than you take every time you take. So it's, again, you know, when you go to India, for instance, you'll see that they take exactly what they need. They live meagerly, you know, and simplistically, and they don't waste anything. They use everything that they have at their disposal. You know, from the coconut husk gets used to make rope, you know, and the husk itself is used for cooking the oil. So, I mean, every component of everything that they have in their environment is basically used and recycled to the best of their ability, which is something we're long past here. I mean, I can't tell you how much trash my business and my home creates every week. It's astounding. And I know I'm not helping the earth in that aspect, so.
Well, you said that it's been around for 5,000 years. Do you believe that it's, you know, the basis of all healing modalities throughout the world? Or do you think it's just, you know, basically, you know, an Indian thing? Or
I definitely think that Ayurveda has been around for so long, and it is the basis for every other type of healing. When you look at Ayurveda, they incorporate herbs and herbology into the healing process, and Chinese medicine is an offshoot of that. It's using herbs for healing. And of course, there are many different factions in Asia that seem to run over one another, and you'll see that again and again when you go, you know, to Thailand or to Japan or to China or to India, Korea. They incorporate a lot of the same looks in their, you know, in their philosophies. Their structure is very similar, and the way they live their lives is very similar. But yeah, Ayurveda is supposedly the origin of all healing modalities, and homeopathy is the offshoot of that, and again, Chinese medicine, herbology, all of them are, you know, part and parcel. I mean, preventive functional nutrition, which I study, is very much derived of Ayurveda. So it's like, you know, there's a way about Ayurveda too. When you go to India, it's just, you feel this wisdom. You know, it's very permeating. And most of the people there very much look like they live this. You know, not the people so much in the cities, but definitely in the country. They've maintained the simplicity, and they've maintained the harmony, and they've maintained that just amazing lamplight glow in their eyeballs. You know, and the beautiful skin and the brilliant smiles and the sweetness, that disposition that goes with meditation and following routines. And in India, people go to bed with the sun and they get up, or go to bed with the sunset and go, you know, uprise with the sunrise, which is the way our bodies are meant to actually focus.
So you said that generally people in the cities don't follow this. Does that mean that if you live a city lifestyle that you cannot be balanced?
No, it doesn't mean that at all. It's just a little bit tougher because I think our lives are a little more strenuous in that respect. You know, we're not getting up to milk the cows in the morning, so we don't have to be up at sunrise or even at dark before sunrise. So, I mean, I know me, myself, I'll do anything I can to sleep an extra 20 minutes. You know, I'll grab that extra 15 or 20.
Keep hitting the snooze button.
Right. I'll get up, run my bath, dive back into my pillows, just like that. But I've gotten better over the years. I mean, now I'm literally up every day at 6 or 6:30, and then again, we'll talk about doshas, but there's an appropriate way to eat, to live, and to kind of dance with the rhythm of your body depending on your dosha.
Yeah, can you go into that for us a little bit?
Sure.
Doshas, and you also said something about yoga and
Pranayama.
Pranayama.
Pranayama is the breath or the breathing. And again, you talked about it a bit when we had our session on colonics,
Yes.
but the breath is so important, and the breath brings life to the body. And most of us don't breathe properly. We get really stressed and we'll go like, especially women. Women are very shallow breathers. They don't breathe to the gut. Like you'll go into a gym and you'll see men breathing when they do their weight-bearing exercises. They're like, you know, they're doing all this blowing, which means they're bringing breath into the gut area down here around the, you know, below the diaphragm, and they're blowing out from that area, which means they're bringing breath all the way down through the whole chakra, all of the different power centers in the body. Whereas women breathe right here into their chest, so they're very shallow in their breathing, which is not good.
Right.
You know, you don't energize the system.
Everything stagnates.
Right. So the dosha premise is basically that we're all born with 3 doshas, and there's vata, pitta, and kapha. For instance, a vata person physically tends to be very tall and lean and very dry and brittle, more so as they get older, but they're dry everywhere for the most part. And they have certain personality traits that are associated with the primary dosha being vata. And like I said, we all have all 3 to varying degrees, but there's a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary.
Okay.
The pitta type would be somebody who is a combination of a kapha and a vata body. Generally, they're not too thin and they're not too big. They're usually kind of neutral right in the middle, but they're kind of more fiery. They're more reactive individuals. They tend to be reactive rather than proactive. For the most part, that's their psyche more or less, whereas a vata type tends to be very cerebral, very creative, very like, you know, they come breezing in. You can always tell when a vata's in the room because they're like, you know, kind of like chihuahua energy, I call it. And then there's a kapha, and the kapha person tends to be the type of person who puts on weight more readily. Kaphas are more grounded. They're rooted into the earth easier than the pitta and the vata types. And a kapha person tends to be a little more slow to react. They're not fiery. They tend to be creative to a degree, but they're not as creative as a vata would be necessarily. And then they tend to also gain weight. So because they're so well grounded. So, and I think the reason, you know, and according to Ayurveda, the reason more kaphas tend to gain weight is because they take a lot. They take it in and they don't let it out. So they're very compassionate and understanding, and they just keep accepting things from people by the most part, whereas a pitta will be like, wow, they'll just give it right back to you. And a vata's moving so fast they can't even take it in. So the kaphas end up internalizing a lot of this, and it manifests in the body physically. So again, we're all born in what we call perfect doshic balance.
Yeah, can you tell me about that?
Well, supposedly at birth, unless you have some type of trauma in the birthing process, it is purported that in Ayurveda you're born in perfect doshic balance. And what we're trying to attain by coming back to using Ayurveda in our lives and doing the treatment called Panchakarma, which I hope we have time to talk about, we want to get back to that perfect doshic balance. It's hard to stay there because our lives are crazy, you know, and we don't eat the way we should necessarily for our dosha, and we don't do the breathing, and we don't do the meditation every day, and we don't do yoga every day. We can't. It's impossible. But for the most part, if you're not too kapha, then you're not gaining weight. If you're not too vata, you're not too nuts, you know, or too flying around like a chicken with your head cut off and reactive. If you're not too pitta, you're not as fiery. And again, when you're real vata, you tend to be very constipated. That goes with vata people because all their energy is stuck up in their head. Not enough is in the colon. Pitta people have too much fire in the digestive tract, so they tend to have ulcers a lot, and they tend to have more fiery reactions like skin eruptions and things like that, so it's reactive responses, whereas Kaphas kind of are quietly, insidiously get sick. They end up with gaining weight, developing diabetes, they get a lot of arthritic problems, joint problems, so those all go with that. So when we get into our doshic balance, we remove the excess Vata, Pitta, or Kapha.
And how do you attain that balance?
You do that with foods, for one thing, and actually we're doing a series of lectures that are free in conjunction with like Whole Foods to talk about how to get into your doshic balance and how do you do your pulse. So people are welcome to call and see, you know, when these are offered. We've got them sporadically throughout the rest of the year. But eating in certain manners and getting up at a certain time, like a Kapha person should ideally get up in the morning before 6 a.m. to stay in Kapha balance. And personally, I've tried it. When I get up at 6 a.m. for a week straight, I lose weight. It never fails. I'll take off 5-6 pounds without changing anything else. I just drop weight if I get up early.
Really?
Yeah.
No matter what time you go to sleep?
Right. It's very interesting. Whereas
how do you feel, though?
I love sleep, but Kaphas love sleep. It's like their favorite thing to do is to sleep, you know, for the most part. But a Kapha can go into a Vata phase. It's like just because you're a certain, you know, dosha, a primary dosha, it doesn't mean that you stay stuck there.
Right.
Like when I came back from India this year, there was trouble. I went into it. I just kept moving and moving and moving, and I couldn't relax. And that really kicks you out of whack. And I mean, even not sleeping can make you lose weight if you stay up long enough.
So you went past the balance and swung to the other.
I flipped, yeah. I became way too Vata. And then you can become very, very emotional when you don't get sleep and you get too Vata too. Then you become more Pitta because now you're reacting to everything. So it's like, wow. So you can eat certain foods to help bring that back, like to make yourself more Kapha and calm you down, whether you're Pitta, you know, too much Vata, not enough Kapha, would be to eat things that are grounding, like more red meats. You know, rooty vegetables and starchy things like eggplant and tomatoes will actually increase your Kapha. Potatoes.
Now, how does one find out exactly what foods can help them
I've
do
got
that?
a great book to recommend. This is probably one of my favorite books. I don't know if the camera can see this, but it's called The Complete Book of Ayurvedic Home Remedies. And the greatest thing about Vasant Ladd's book is that it's really, really appropriately priced.
Who's it by?
Vasant Ladd, L-A-D-D.
Okay.
And he is actually the owner of a school in New Mexico called the Ayurvedic Institute, and he has a sister institute in India where he teaches. He splits his time and his services. But there's what we call a dosha questionnaire in here. And if people want, they don't have to buy the book certainly, but they could call me, and we'll be happy to send them a dosha questionnaire out.
And what does the questionnaire assess?
It assesses your primary, secondary, and tertiary dosha.
Wow.
So you can find out if you're Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Kapha, Pitta, Vata, whatever it is. So.
And does it have a list of foods to tell you what it is?
Yeah. This will tell you what foods to eat more or less of to balance your dosha out a little bit. It gives you the routines, and it also gives some great, simple, cheap remedies. You know, like turmeric if you're having skin problems, and different teas to take if you have headaches, and yada, yada, yada. So.
That's great.
Yeah, it is. It's a good guide.
Now, is there ever a time when doshas are perfectly balanced? I mean, I know that's the goal and that's what you're trying to attain, but does it ever happen? I mean, it almost seems impossible.
Well, I'll share with you a really interesting circumstance that happened to me when I was in India. That was really quite incredible. I'd never experienced anything quite like it. Close one time, but not the same. And I had done the treatment called Panchakarma, which we'll get into, and when I was walking home after about the second week of my treatment, it was just astounding. It's like, it felt like the moon was coming out of the sky to talk to me. You know, I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm tripping on something. I don't know what it was. I got up in the morning and the blues were so brilliant and the greens were so beautiful. And, you know, the birds were swooping around and I was kind of blubbering and crying at breakfast. And my boyfriend at the time looked at me and goes, "What is wrong with you?" You know, and I was, "Oh, it's so beautiful." And everything was so beautiful. And I went back to the clinic after my series of treatments. And I said to the doctor at the clinic, you know, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? He said, you are what we call in perfect doshic balance right now. He said, you are basically wide open. You're one with the universe, And this is what people try to obtain when they meditate 12 hours a day, every day of their life. And I had done the year before a Kundalini yoga weekend where I meditated 12 hours, 2 days in a row, which was A, exhausting, but B, the same type of a thing, like by about the 8th hour of meditation and chanting, I was laughing and crying. I was like completely sorrowful and joyful at the same time. It was very bizarre. And I was like, what's wrong with
But
me?
isn't that draining? I mean,
Sure it is.
did you find it
exhausting.
peaceful or?
The Kundalini yoga, the chanting and sitting straight for 12 hours was exhausting for me. I don't like sitting anywhere for 12 hours. Right. So that's the Vata in me. It's got to move. But when I did the Panchakarma, it's a passive acceptance of a treatment, so it's extremely relaxing. But, I mean, just the sensation that I had, and I have to say it lasted for probably about 5 or 6 days, because after that I could literally see people's auras when it was dark out, like at sunset, for 3 of the days. I was like, I can see your aura. I see the sun. I see your aura. It was really amazing. And then it started to go away. And the doctor said that it would go away once I became inundated in the same old stuff, the busyness that our lives are composed of. So, yeah, you lose it. You grab it and you lose it. But the whole idea is to come back into balance. And you do that by creating a routine in your life.
Okay, so routine is the key word.
Big, big part of it.
So once you create that balance, you want to maintain it.
Right. Like my friend Christy, who's here today, and hopefully Christy will ask us some questions later, but the one thing that I really admire about you, Christy, is that you really do have a routine. It's like Christy gets up really early every morning, like 5 o'clock, 5:36 at the latest, which is great for kaphas, but she's in bed every night by 9:30 or 10. It's like she has a routine and she sticks to it, you know, which I really admire, and it's something that I've had to really work at obtaining in my life, because nighttime has always been the right time for me. It's like peace, quiet, no telephones, you know. So you start doing things. But the routine is important, having your meals at the same time every day. You know, feeding yourself with continuity, you know, treating your body like a little temple, like you've been given a gift, and it's this body that we're housed in. And to take care of that means being really mindful of how you treat it, what you put into it. You know, and I always tell people, if you're concerned about what you're putting in your body, don't know quite if it's right or wrong, would you put it in a baby's body? Would you put caffeine in a baby's body? Would you give a baby citrus, you know, every single day? Would you give your baby, 12 ounces of red meat in one sitting? Things like that. No. Would you make your baby stay up, you know, past midnight? No, you can't go to sleep. You have too much to do. You're going to entertain me. No. The baby will be screaming. You know, would you, not let your baby go to the bathroom? When the baby had to go to the bathroom, most of us don't even take time to go to the bathroom when we have to go. It's like, oh, I'll hold it for another 4 hours, you know. Right. This is not a good thing. Right. This is not appreciating the rhythm of your body, the circadian rhythm that we're born into and that we live in.
So stifling, you know, your
natural rhythms, yeah. And then again, creating the routine so the body has this flow about it. I think probably one of the best analogies I can make is my grandpa, who lived to be like 84 years old, 85 years old. Was an incredible guy. This man would get up every day and go for a walk. You know, and the sicker he got and the more arthritic he got, if he went to the mailbox and back, he went for his walk every day of his life. Ate the same time every day. Took like 4 hours to eat breakfast, 4 hours to eat lunch, ate slowly. Nobody could rush him. You know, he had his routine down to a science. And he lived a very uncomplicated, wonderful life in many respects he was never sick. Never sick. He ended up having a couple strokes, but his passing was very gradual and it was very passive because he was really into his routine. It was astonishing. And when you're young, you look at that and go, oh, boring. You know, but honestly, it's the best thing you could possibly do for yourself.
So you had mentioned Panchakarma, these treatments that helped you get into this balance. Can you tell us a little more?
Yeah, Panchakarma is pretty incredible. Panchakarma is like, the 5,000-year-old modality of healing that actually originated in India, and it was used for the aristocratic families of India, the royalty. It wasn't available to the public like it is now, but it was used for assisting in balancing the doshas and helping rid the body of disease and aging. So The panchakarma is the use of medicated oils that are geared towards the Vata, Pitta, Kapha types. And the oils are extremely soothing. It's like being a big baby. You know, you lay on a table and the oils get smeared all over your body. And they're medicated oils that are actually treated and cooked for a minimum of 15 to 90 days with incredible amounts of herbs, tinctures, and teas,
Wow.
which are also medicated. So, you know, this oil sits there in this huge cauldron, and it's stirred 24 hours a day for this 15 to 60 days.
Wow.
And every 3 to 5 hours, they're adding another tincture, another tea, or another herb to it. So by the time it's done after its treatment, it's extremely potent and quite penetrating. So the oil goes on the body, and you're very briskly rubbed in a lymphatic drainage kind of stroke. And the stroke is basically done in such a manner that it causes the lymphatics to start discharging toxins. And it's very soothing at the same time because it's warm and it's heated, but it's also, there's a purpose for the stroke and the way in which your body is moved, you know, the different skin, you're pushed up and you're pushed down. So it all comes to the center to help you discharge and detox. And then there's a vasti involved, which is taking oil into the rectum, which is to help you detox the colon because we're pushing all the toxins towards the center of the body, which is the colon area. And then there's a nasya, which is the nose oil that goes in here to help you clean the mucus and the toxins out of your sinuses.
Wow.
And then there is finally, towards the middle to the end of your treatment, there's something called the Shirodhara, which is the drip, the warm oil drip on the third eye or the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is the area where we have repressed emotions and locked up kind of memories. And when you start releasing there, you're really releasing. So,
Wow.
I mean, I can do the panchakarma treatment on an individual. Like I had a woman in last week who came in so pitta, and a pitta pulse is like a frog jumping. So this woman was like bing da bing da bing da bing, and she's an associate of mine, and she said, you know what, and she deals with people, she's a little healer, and she's like, I could care less if anybody gets healed this week. They're calling me up, I'm like, who cares, you know? I don't even want to hear about it. So she was real reactive, and I was like, well, let's get you on the table. She goes, oh, I need a treatment. She jumps up on the table, and she's like, you know, do me. Kind of thing. So I put the oil on her and started with the warm oil, and I took her pulse, and within 5 minutes, her pulse came down from a pitta to a vata. It was astounding. Now it's like a snake when it's a Vata pulse, which means that she's coming out of the reactionary phase. She's going more into a healing modality. Her mind is still working very quickly, but she's like slowing down a little bit. And then after I finished the treatment on her body, which was about 40 minutes of the oils and, you know, detoxing her, and I used some lymphatic drainage powders to help really start burning fat on the system. It's called the Tripoli powder, which really melts fat away on people. And normally it aggravates people and can make them more pitta. Well, after I did that on her and I did the Shirodhara, I took her pulse and it was like, I thought she was in a coma. It was like, bum, bum. It was like a kapha pulse, which is like an elephant, like walking real slow. You know, and I was just like, and she got off the table and she looked at me and she was like, I gotta go home. She was absolutely zoned out. So mellow. I mean, so mellow. And she's like, you know, do you think this could be addictive? And I said, you know, I think we need it. I don't think it's a matter of addiction. I think it's a matter of, you know, our lives are so crazy in this country. We've far outpaced the Japanese, I'm sure of it. And because we deal with so much stress and we wear so many hats, and we have to be so on all the time, and we have to be there for everybody in our lives, beyond our own lives, which are pretty painstaking anyway. Right. It's like you never take time to like come to center. We crash and burn and go to bed, but that's it. So the panchakarma is a way of bringing you back to balance.
Are you able to be productive when you're getting these treatments?
Mm-hmm. It depends how much oil you actually use on the body and how stimulating you are or how pacifying you are. So if the oils are warmer, they're more penetrating, so they elicit a stronger response. If the oils are cooler, it's not as aggravating, it's more soothing. Okay. And yes, then you can certainly work throughout that. But if you do the Shirodhara with a very warm oil, it's also more penetrating. It tends to hit harder. If you use a cooler oil, it tends to be a little more soothing for people. So
the cooler is more soothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The heat is more penetrating.
Now, how much time is necessary to see these benefits of the panchakarma?
It varies. I mean, one treatment for somebody who's already been through their treatment modality is great, but for most people, a minimum of a week to 2 weeks is ideal and optimal. You'll elicit a huge response, and if you do a dietary intervention for your dosha, you're on your way.
Now, what are the most notable results from these
They
treatments?
vary from person to person, and I know we only have a few minutes, so we probably want to take questions, but they vary greatly from person to person, but people generally see rapid weight loss if they stick with the dietary protocols inclusive to the treatment. They see balancing, so they're not so pitta and reactionary. For vata people, it tends to slow them down, which vatas don't like at all, but they need to. So it will balance their dosha, and for kaphas, it picks them up, it energizes them. So most kaphas go home and clean closets till 2 in the morning, honestly. So, you know, you can do that as well.
And one more thing before we take questions. I know that Dr. Shambhu may be coming back to Chicago.
For sure he is,
Can
yeah.
you tell us a little bit, when is he coming back?
Well, Dr. Shambhu is associated with our clinic. He has a sister clinic in India, and we're trading services and teaching. So he comes back to work over at Nutrition Consultants in May.
Okay.
And he'll be back for 6 months, God willing,
Wow.
doing treatments on people and consultations. So people are welcome to call and gather more information on that if they'd like to.
And if they need to make an appointment, they would call the number on the screen?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, does anyone have any questions from our fair audience here on Panchakarma and Ayurveda?
Ask away.
Please, feel free. No?
Come on, Paul. I know you have questions because you always have questions.
What is the main difference between receiving colonics through the Panchakarma and Ayurvedic procedures versus any other type of colonic?
Well, a colonic is a colonic, and that is nothing to do with Ayurveda. The Vasti is the treatment that we do in Ayurveda. In Panchakarma, actually, and the Vasti is an infusion of oil that goes in the rectum. And the oils, again, are medicated oils, so they're very, very strong. But the Vata is very soothing. It takes down any kind of irritation, and the Pitta is a little bit stronger, which detoxifies you a little bit more. So it's not a colonic at all. The thing about oil that goes up the rectum is it snakes through the colon, so it literally helps to break away, chips away at the glue-like substance along the wall of the colon, and you'll see a lot of mucus wrapped around stool after you do the Vasti. And the whole purpose is to get that mucus out of there because it's very sticky. It holds feces, and therefore it holds toxins. So it's altogether a different procedure.
But is it recommended to have colonics along with going through the Panchakarma treatment where they could benefit
You
one
sure
another?
could. It certainly would depend again on your specific problems. Like if you're finding that, you know, some people can heal too quickly. I'm a big believer in like doing one thing at a time so you can see, you know, benefits and gains. If you've been doing colonics, absolutely. If you've done Panchakarma before, absolutely. If you've never done either before, I might suggest you start with one or the other first. And I would say before Panchakarma, you start with colonics.
Okay, thank you.
And just get your colon cleared out. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you for the question. We've got 1 minute to go here, so
I
make
just
this
want
quick.
to know, if you're sick, is it a good thing to have Panchakarma?
That's a great question.
Sick with what?
Like a fever.
Sick.
Oh.
Or not only just a fever, but in general, your illness, like if you had cancer or if you have an illness that you're dealing
Oh,
with,
absolutely.
a chronic condition, can
Okay.
you were talking about how sometimes it can bring out some problems.
We've got to get going here. But
Yeah, absolutely. It's great for things like that. If you have a fever, no, you won't do Panchakarma. But if you have an illness like a chronic disease or a cancer or something, absolutely. It penetrates, cleans the cells, and gets you all kind of
I'm
pulled
sorry,
back.
we've got to get going. Thank you so much for having
For being
for
here.
being here.
I'm happy to be here.
And everybody, thank you for your questions.
Thank you for having me.